Okay, perfect. We got over 50. Let's kick off now. Hi guys to this London Tech Week event. My name is Sandeep Arora. I'm the CEO of Aurora Digital. We're a leading UK market entry launchpad program, been running for about 3 years now. We've collaborated with Tech UK on this event. Tech UK, in case you're not aware, is the voice of the UK tech community. And we've got one of the speakers from Tech UK on the panel today as well. So hopefully that will be great to get some of their insights. You have got an amazing panel anyway. You've got 6 people on our panel today, all coming from different perspectives. What we're trying to do is to make this a very practical session. So no long-winded talking. It's very much sort of Q&A based is the way we've tried to approach this, which is slightly different to other events we've seen. But the idea very much is you have the information you need to know, or you know where to get it. So you know if you are going to enter the UK market, have you got the information, or where do you get it from? What's the next step? So that's kind of the idea of this. We will make our details available to you after this event as well. So if you want to get in contact with us or one of the panelists, just let us know. Aim really is to arm you with all the information you need to see if the UK is the right place for yourselves. I hope that's okay. And on that basis, what I'm now going to do is introduce our first speaker from Tech UK, who is collaborating on this event. We've got Matt Robinson, who's the head of nations and regions at Tech UK. Matt, you're probably going to have to tell us a bit about what that means, though I've got a rough idea. But it'd be great if you can just tell us a bit about the role that you do and perhaps how you engage with some of the tech startups that you work with at Tech UK.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be with you this morning. And I look forward to hearing the contributions from the other panelists as well. As you've said, Sandeep, I'm head of nations and regions for Tech UK, which involves working with not just devolved governments in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, but also local councils, our regional mayors, those who've got powers outside of central government, and how those relationships are functioning, working, and can be developed with Tech UK members, with the UK tech sector as well, and making sure that we're talking about levelling up and making sure that levelling up is seen in action as opposed to perhaps just being a soundbite as others perceive it.
Brilliant. Well, I guess we're starting off with that. Perhaps you can tell the audience who may not all be aware of the UK sort of policies. What is levelling up? What is that? What does it mean?
Obviously, the Prime Minister's came into office and was really, really keen to champion levelling up and make sure that it was seen as a reality. And I think there's a risk, unfortunately, that levelling up can be seen as all about infrastructure, as new roads and new bridges. Actually, there's a really important part that tech has to play in this and making sure we're developing jobs, skills in the tech sector of the future. And that's where my role in Tech UK comes in, to make sure that we are having those conversations with government, but we're also saying what the sector's seeing, what SMEs, what other partners are seeing, and how it can work. And that's what's informed part of our work on local digital capital. So local digital capital was a piece of work that we did in 2020, working with local government, with business leaders, with those from the tech sector from across the UK to look at just what the building blocks are behind a strong tech ecosystem in each of the different nations and regions. And they fed back to us, and we built those components together. So there'll be things that wouldn't surprise you, things like digital infrastructure, digital skills, data ecosystems, but also include things like finance and investment and trade support. And we need to make sure we're talking up those angles if we're going to get levelling up right in the UK and right across the UK as well.
Okay, but what does that mean for a company looking at an opportunity and thinking, should I come to London? Shall I go to Manchester? Shall I go to Northern Ireland? What does that mean from their perspective? Are there any sort of outcomes, findings so far that we can perhaps share with you?
Yeah, so I think one of the first ones was that people wanted to understand how that framework worked and how the different nations and regions could be measured against each other. So we recently launched our Local Digital Capital Index, which is on our website and you can go and take a look at now. And that measures those different components across the different nations and regions. So we saw some things like London and the South East being particularly strong in areas, but there are also really, really great examples of best practice, such as digital infrastructure being incredibly strong in the West Midlands. And that goes to show that the investment in the 5G testbed that's gone on there is actually having an impact. We also saw that Northern Ireland is especially strong at trade and trade support. Just last week, the government had the Business and Innovation Showcase for Northern Ireland, And the digital tech sector in particular, they are really keen to champion this and look at the investment opportunities that are available. And Maytech UK members from Northern Ireland are keen to have those conversations too. So I think that the framework is a good example, but there are also other recommendations looking at how we can use the apprenticeship levy more, looking at how we can make sure there's a one-stop shop for anybody looking to come and invest. At the moment, it is a little convoluted. It's hard for people to navigate. Actually, government needs to get better at working with the sector and working with our regional leaders to make sure we're championing that and making sure we're showing what is different about the regions, what makes them unique and why they can attract investment.
And did you say that digital chapter is now complete?
So that digital index is complete. That's online now, so people can go and take a look and see how those different nations and regions compare against each other. That's something that we'll be doing every year and going down into more and more detail to look at them, not just from a regional perspective, but to try and get even more localized. So thinking about not just the Northwest, but Manchester and Liverpool as well, and drilling down into the data. But what we're keen to do is make sure that it's not just seen as some sort of Premier League table of who's top and who's not. Actually, there are great examples of best practice for those across the UK. So while they might not be top overall, they're really, really pioneering and innovating in different sectors. So West Mids, I mentioned there is a good example. There's actually great stuff going on in the east of England and the southwest. So I think there's a lot of conversations to be had. And for those looking to invest in the UK, it's a great time to be thinking about it.
Brilliant. Sounds like a great report. Would you like to tell everyone what the website is for the report?
Yeah, if you go online and go on to Tech UK, it comes up on our main website to go and have a look at the index and the report. There's the different regional reports from last year. You've also got the index that's live now, and we will have a local digital capital working group that's been set up to look at how we can develop the index, but how we can develop local digital capital in each of the regions too. So if anybody wants to get in touch and be part of that and be involved in that discussion, I welcome that, definitely.
Brilliant. And just finally, from my perspective, I'll ask the other panelists if they want to add anything to the whole idea of leveling up gender, etc. as well. But in terms of the support that Tech UK provide, I mean, maybe for our outside UK sort of attendees, it'd be useful for them to understand how you might be able to support them as they're thinking about the UK.
Yeah, I think we're there as a partner to work with people to understand just what the USPs are, what makes your company, your product innovative, what you're seeking to get out of it, and how we can work with government, local, national as well, to make sure that we are showcasing that, we're pioneering that, and we're also developing those partnerships too. Similarly, those agencies of government are keen to work with us to look at this, and we are keen to develop that relationship and where works best and what's best fit for the sector particularly.
Brilliant. I'd like to invite any of the other panelists if they'd like to add any comments to the whole leveling up agenda and the digital chapter, if they've been involved.
They're going to pepper me with questions later as it comes through. I know that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, unusually quiet. Maybe it's too early in the morning. I'm sure they'll change. That's fine. Look, look, a fantastic report for the audience. Look, a fantastic report. It's completely free. It's obviously some very, very detailed work behind it. Strongly recommend if you're thinking about the UK to get access to that digital chapter. If you'd like to know a bit more about Tech UK and how it might support you, just get in contact with us. We work with Tech UK a lot. As we said, this is a collaborative event with Tech UK, and we'll point you in the right direction. So, so thank you very much, Matt. Very useful.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to pop over to Braden. Ben was the former head of Level 39 and is probably one of the most sort of well-connected people within the startup system within the UK. Ben, it'd be great if you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, Sandy, thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to join you this morning and one of the inaugural events of London Tech Week, so I'm delighted to be here. You're absolutely right. I used to run an organisation called Level 39, which, for those who don't already know, is the largest cluster of fintech and cybersecurity companies here in London in the UK. And I was very fortunate there not only to play host to around about 200 predominantly B2B fintech and cybersecurity companies, but also to host companies from about 50 different countries. So it is very much an example of London's international innovation ecosystem. So that's something I did, having actually started my career as a fintech founder myself. I built an early crowdfunding platform, which I sold in 2010, and then spent a little bit of time working with the UK government. So at that stage, I was helping introduce overseas investors to UK tech companies. So I have a long-running interest in the way in which the UK ecosystem supports, particularly fintech innovation, but more broadly, cybersecurity and other digital innovation too. And I think what I focus on really working with organizations now is helping them understand through three things: how to communicate clearly in this extremely congested, contested environment, how to build the right kind of relationships to support them in finding the shortest path to market, ensuring that the sales cycle in this notoriously complex environment is as clear and swift as possible, and understanding the way in which the ecosystem around them operates, how reputations are built and sometimes lost, and how they can be protected and extended.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Ben. I think we probably want to sort of jump in now with some of your personal experiences of working with this large number of startups in the past. So as we all know, so when startups think about a new market, they're trying to get going as quickly as possible. There's obviously the sort of cash run that's going on. What do you find? I mean, if you were going to share with the audience some of your lessons learned, what would be some of those lessons learned to see how you can get the fastest traction in the market in the quickest possible time? What's your general thoughts around that?
Well, it's such an important question. And of course, sales are the single most important indicator of the progress of an early stage organization. And sometimes we may forget that as we spend so much attention on the activities of investors. So I would suggest, particularly in B2B business development, it's incredibly important to think clearly about how it is you're going to validate the opportunity that the market represents, especially if you're thinking of an international move. And having validated that, figure how you can make sure you have the best chance of early sales conversions. Now, to your question, what did I learn over 4 years at level 39? Well, let me give you a kind of rule of thumb, a heuristic, if you like. What fairly quickly emerged to me is that the organizations which make the most rapid progress in building sales relationships are also those that most often feature in the activity of other startups. In other words, if you want to set up a significant community that helps you to engage with your potential customers, it makes a great deal of sense not to focus on those binary individual relationships with prospect clients, so much as to figure who your channel partners are, who is offering a proposition which is adjacent and complementary to yours, and even, and I highlight this, even figuring out how you can actually collaborate with your competitors. Because of course, one of the fundamentals of most startups is that actually they've got much more in common with their competitors than with anybody else. And therefore, if you can coordinate and engage with your competitors rather than seeking to build walls between you, it actually means that you find the customers who are best suited to your proposition and don't spend time competing with organizations or for organizations who you were never going to be so well placed to engage with too. In other words, market intelligence from your competitors is incredibly valuable because they're experts. And not only that, but if they give you a referral, that's doubly credible. And that is the basic function of all of your network. It is to make sure that you're introduced to prospects by trusted third parties. That I would recommend is at the heart of any market entry strategy for a company establishing in the UK.
That's very good. And I guess conversely, and you probably sort of answered it by what you said so far, but what are the typical mistakes you continually see companies make, even though they've probably read the books, they've looked through, they've seen examples, they've spoken to their peers that already enter the market, but what do you see they constantly still make the same mistakes again and again? I mean, do you see some of those sort of gems you can share with the audience?
Well, that's a great question. And of course, we could spend the rest of London Tech Week exploring mistakes. The list of things that don't work is a lot longer than the list of things that do. So I thank you for the question. I'm going to limit myself to just one. The one thing which most of us, and this is true not only of startups, but it's true of individuals within the startup community too. The one thing that we almost all get wrong routinely, and I speak for myself as well, is we go into too much detail. So think of the classic pitching environment. Especially founders without much experience will spend their time trying to squeeze as much information into the smallest possible amount of time that they possibly can. The result is a 30-second burst of detail. And if you listen to that and then listen to the next one, you'll very quickly find they merge and blur. And you just know, well, I met someone really smart. I'm not quite sure what they did, and I'm not really sure why it's relevant to me. I would say boil it all down, distill it just to the essence of what you're seeking to do. And that does two things. First of all, it saves you and the people around you time. And secondly, and much more importantly, it means those people around you can reliably transmit it. In other words, get across the essence of what you're trying to do, briefly and in normal people's language. And then those normal people can do a great deal more to make sure, through the power of Granovetter's weak connections, weak ties, that you find and you are found by your customers, but also your investors and the people you're going to want to hire as you grow too.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for that. And just talking more generally about the sort of ecosystem within the UK, and I talk, about the tech ecosystem, perhaps the fintech ecosystem, if that's an area that you know more than I know, you're far more than that. What do you think makes the UK tech scene different to perhaps what we've seen in other countries, and which country people are attendees may be aware of? What do you think makes it different, special, or unique in some ways?
Well, this is such an important question, and very often, of course, when people compare internationally, there are so many distractions. There's so much noise when you try to conduct this kind of analysis. It's very, very difficult indeed to avoid if you've never heard of the expression cargo culting, I'd recommend you look it up. But it has a history from the Second World War, where islanders who saw the US Navy and Air Force advancing across the Pacific were curious about how to make sure that they benefited. And so they copied some of the things they saw happening on islands where the US military was active. And this is a really good metaphor for much of international innovation activity. It's very tempting to copy the cosmetic manifestations that you see in successful environments in other countries. And I'd invite everyone to look well below that at the fundamentals. And in the case of the UK, I'd single out one thing, and this is particularly pertinent for financial services innovation. The UK is a common law jurisdiction. And as a result, innovation enjoys a fundamental advantage. If you think of the legal framework of a country as like its operating system, this is not that we have a handy app running. You could call that the Financial Conduct Authority, for example. You can only run something like the Financial Conduct Authority in a common law environment in which essentially innovators can experiment and innovate and are only stopped from doing things when a problem is identified. And that's rather different in some other legal systems, in which, of course, people have to be allowed to do things before they can do them. In other words, the open-endedness, the unwritten constitution and the role of precedent and common law is hard to overstate when you come to innovate in the UK. You enjoy here a level of freedom which is baked in to the fundamentals of our legal system. And I'd highlight that, and especially when it comes to financial services innovation. That is why the advantages you enjoy here are not just the usual suspects, the progressive regulator, the active, massive, globally connected financial infrastructure, the wonderful supply of talent, and the proliferation of excellent universities. Underpinning all of that is the fact that our whole legal system, society, and culture is set up to permit and support innovation.
Well, you've given everyone 1,000 reasons to come to London, so I hope everyone's listening. But there's one sort of thing in the room that perhaps we should talk about, which is Brexit, right? So, and I guess particularly from a fintech perspective, be interesting to get your views, Ben, in terms of whether you've seen more hesitation in fintechs coming to London, whether it's changed the scene of the type of fintechs that come to London, or the UK more generally, sorry, not just London. But yeah, love to hear your views about what you think Brexit's done and where you think it may go in a few years' time as well.
Well, it's very hard, isn't it, to tease out the role of Brexit among so many other challenges that any early stage business faces, and even before one thinks of the challenges associated with the pandemic, it's always difficult to support innovation. It's always difficult, particularly to do so internationally. So I think we are anyway talking about and to people who are taking on huge challenges. The specific issues associated with Brexit, I would suggest, are rapidly actually becoming, if not resolved, then at least clarified. Now, as I mentioned, the UK is in fact fundamentally different, certainly, for example, from most European jurisdictions. And that may be one of the undeclared causes of some of the frictions which may have contributed to Brexit. So in fact, it may be that some of the opportunities in the UK come into clearer focus now as a result of Brexit. The fact that the UK enjoys a distinct legal as well as cultural foundation to many of our friends and peers across continental Europe may mean that for innovators coming to the UK, it's clearer what you get. And perhaps it's also clearer what you don't get. And clarity is more important in many cases for entrepreneurs than, if you like, an all-you-can-eat menu. So the UK may not be everything, but it is flexible. It's committing itself to being extremely internationally open and engaged. And while some of the traditional, or recently traditional bonds with the EU have loosened, I'd suggest they haven't disappeared, and they may indeed be augmented by plenty of other greater flexibilities, which clearly are the priority of the government in its negotiations as well.
Brilliant. I guess there's still quite a few points still to be cleared up as well, which will take time as well, given the speed at which Brexit was finally done. So no, thank you very much for that. You've got some lovely comments in the chat for yourself as well there, Ben, I think from Stephanie, etc. So you can have a look at those in your own time. I don't know if any of the other panelists want to talk more generally about some of the thoughts that Ben had about the ecosystem in London or the UK more broadly again.
Sandeep, just it's Matt here. Just to say, I think Ben raised a really great point about collaboration and collaboration with competitors. And one of the things we were saying when producing our reports is that people wanted to collaborate more. There was a shared challenge that many businesses have, and actually understanding that. So digital skills, for example, and understanding your supply chain, but understanding the skills pipeline of talent and workforce that's coming through. Every business is going through that, and actually sharing some of that and understanding that to help the ecosystem improve is what people wanted to do. It shouldn't always be seen as competitive, but actually far more collaborative on occasion as well.
No, really good point. Absolutely. We have got a couple of questions. I'm just looking at the time. We'll try and get through at least one of them for you, Ben, if that's okay. So one was a bit about sort of crypto fintech companies and about how difficult it is to set something like that up in the UK.
Well, this is a perennial and a great question. And I guess the ebbs and flows in the attitudes of regulators to crypto showed no sign of abating. And for example, if you want a quick update on a broad view of what's going on in the UK, it's worth taking a look at both the Financial Times, who've commentated on the Financial Conduct Authority's approach to this, and also The Economist, who have focused in the latest edition as well, to give you a broad overview. I'll summarize even more sort of succinctly perhaps than they do, though, by saying it's still not very clear. But back to my point about the role of innovation in the UK, although it is still not entirely clear in the UK, the approach that regulators will take, I think it will become clearer here. This is my confident prediction. You will find stable opportunity for innovation in crypto and in all aspects really of DLT and related technology in the UK than you will elsewhere. So while I can't tell you what the clear outcomes will be, I will confidently assert that you will find clarity here sooner than in most major jurisdictions.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Ben. I appreciate your thoughts there. We're going to jump on just in the interest of time to Navdeep now. This is our first spotlight session on InsurTech. Navdeep, we're lucky to have him there. He's a bit of a guru in this space. senior roles at McKinsey's, KPMG, and now specializes in providing lots of support to insurtech companies at the moment. And Navdeep, wouldn't mind if you, I know I've said quite a few words, but lovely for you to introduce yourself, if that's okay.
Thank you, Sandeep. Hello, everyone. Great to have all of you on the call today. Navdeep Arora. I've been immersed in the insurance sector for the last 26 years. The first 17 years out of those were spent with McKinsey and Company. I left McKinsey in 2013 as a senior partner in the insurance practice. The following 3 years as head of insurance strategy at KPMG in London. And then since 2016, have been deeply immersed in the insurtech and the venture capital world. So as a part of that, I've worked with 3 different VC firms. I've invested in 10 different insurtech startups that I continue to work with very actively. And then recently have started to advise incumbent insurance companies on one side and insurtechs on the other, helping bring them together.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Navdeep. And let's just kick off with probably the question that everyone's asking or themselves if they're in insurtech. What are the key areas within insurtech in the UK that are particularly of interest and particularly in demand at the moment?
So very good question, Sandeep. I'll answer that from 2 different dimensions. I think the first is what are the thematic opportunities? And the second one is if we move away from thematic to more practical, lines of business related opportunities. So thematically, I think there are 3 opportunities. One is what I call consumerization. I think UK is perhaps at the forefront of consumerization of insurance, where insurance is slowly moving from being sold to being bought. And that has massive implications for the type of capabilities the industry needs. Primarily, what it means is enabling consumers to buy insurance at point of sale, regardless of where they are. And I think to me, and this is not only relevant to retail or personal insurance, but it's now moving into SME and even bigger lines of insurance, such as commercial lines. So enabling connectivity, basically, and enabling consumers to meet their insurance needs, regardless of where they are, whether they're at a Starbucks, whether they're buying, airline tickets, whether they're at a hospital getting services, enabling them to purchase the insurance they need at the time they need. That's theme 1. Theme 2 is what I call connectivity. By connectivity, I mean connectivity to the broader ecosystem of insurance. So everyone else other than insurance companies that are connected to the broader ecosystem and finding ways to create value for that ecosystem. So this means designing products, where risk is embedded within the products. This means creating models that move insurance away just from protection to prevention. And number 3, enables insurance companies to be better connected internally as well as externally. So that's the second opportunity. The third opportunity is the capital. As we all know, insurance has long been, a very balance sheet oriented exercise. And the question is, can we now create alternative reinsurance models where we can securitize risk and move that risk directly to capital markets? And there are many new models emerging that take away the capital inefficiencies associated with how insurance backstops or reinsurance is done today. So those are the 3 thematic opportunities: A, consumerization; B, connectivity; and C, capital. Now, if I take the other dimension and I say, okay, Navdeep, next week, tomorrow, I'm putting a gun to your head, choose 3 areas where you'll invest, or where you think insurance offers the most opportunity in the UK. Those 3 areas would be: number 1, life and health insurance. Number 2 would be the SME sector. Number 3, it would be brokers and MGA. On life and health, I think ever since the onset of the COVID pandemic, we've seen a new set of needs that are currently being met poorly by the insurance sector. And I'm talking about, giving people very simple fractional products, almost similar to what we used to call micro insurance in the past. Hospital cash, personal accident, short-term disability, short-term unemployment, being able to offer those products at very low cost of distribution, making those products available to the mass markets. I believe there's a massive opportunity there. The second area is, since again, because of the pandemic, finding ways to combine digital and advice for distribution. As you can imagine, the advisory channels, especially for life and health insurance, have been very difficult to deliver because of the issues with the pandemic. And the question is now, can we create new ways, new platforms that combine digital distribution with the right level of advice? So that goes to life and health. The second one is SME. And as we all know, a large part of the UK economy, a large part of our GDP comes from small and medium enterprises. And many of them, as you well heard, faced massive business disruption and went out of business. And now, as the economy starts to recover, finding ways to educate them, finding ways to deliver new coverages and solutions that are more relevant to them in the post-pandemic environment, as well as offering them digital, low-cost, highly automated solutions to the lower end of the market, to what I call micro SMEs, as well as offering a combination of automation and advice to the higher end of SMEs. I think there's a big unmet need in the market, and the market is looking for insurtech companies to come forward and help them in those solutions. So that's the second area. The third opportunity is in the broker and MGA space. And I think as we all know, London is the hub of insurance globally. More than 60% of global gross written premiums flow through London markets. And if there is a place to come and launch an insurtech effort, I cannot think of a better place than London. But at the same time, brokerage started in London, but brokers have actually not taken the advantage of proliferation in data and digital as much as insurers and some of the direct distributors such as aggregators have. So coming to the market and helping brokers as well as MGAs develop new methods of delivering digital products to markets, of delivering digital advice to the markets, and distributing products without the commission burden that the market has carried in the past. I think the UK regulators are asking some very, very good questions in the moment. They're saying, as we delve more into insurtechs, what does it mean for the end consumer? For every pound of premium that a consumer pays, whether it's a personal consumer or a commercial consumer, currently more than almost 16 to 40% of that pound of premium goes to the intermediaries. So the regulators are pushing to lower the cost of distribution. And I think finding ways to help brokers and MGAs do that would be a massive, massive value add to the markets. So those are the three areas, Sandeep, to your question, where I see the most opportunity.
Brilliant. I think that would probably give a lot of people food for thought there, and I think that's really helpful. Just in terms of what you've seen in terms of insurtechs that you've worked with, and obviously knowing the broader market as well, what are the key pitfalls that you think people should be looking to avoid, and what have you seen as probably the characteristics of some successful insurtech startups that have successfully navigated the UK market?
Yes, indeed, and I've seen many insurtechs thrive, and then many insurtechs just sort of muddle along in the middle, and then a few just fall off the edge. I think the key differences that I've seen are, number one, if I looked at the insurtech markets 5 years ago versus today, I think the markets have moved significantly. Today, leading the markets or entering the market with just a technology buzz is no longer as provocative. I think 6 years ago, you could come to the market with just a pure technology buzz. You could talk about artificial intelligence, blockchain. You could talk about, using the internet to design better products, and I think you would get a lot of traction. I think the incumbents have learned. So today, I think insurtechs that are successful actually lead market entry with a very razor-sharp focus on the needs and the pain points in the market, rather than the technology they're bringing to the table.
Brilliant.
And the second one is not only the needs and pain points, but what is the economic opportunity? So why should I, as an incumbent in the market, I've been in the market for 50 years, why should I work with you as an insurtech? What is the economic opportunity for me, right? And I think to your question earlier, I've come across many great insurtechs that had a wonderful technology and a great idea, but they did not understand how the insurance ecosystem works. They did not understand how value flows, what is it that the customers look for, and how the ecosystem delivers that value. And they, despite having those great ideas, they failed. On the other hand, I've seen insurtechs that had a very simple idea, but were very conversant with the economics of insurance, were very conversant with how the insurance ecosystem works, and they were very, very successful. So I think that's the lesson number 2. The lesson number 3 is I'll go back to what Ben articulated very, very well earlier, that in today's insurtech market, or I would say any markets with proliferation of data and digital capabilities, the value creation opportunity from collaboration is magnitudes greater than the value that you might lose from competition. So finding ways to collaborate with other parts of the ecosystem, whether it's the supply chain, whether it be the channels, whether these are capital providers, whether these are incubators, whether these are the regulators, I think extremely important. And I fully agree with Ben that the UK regulators are at the forefront of it. I've done work in many other markets, such as the US, such as Germany, and now increasingly in the Middle East and Asia. And I think UK regulators are held as an example. So I think finding ways to connect with the regulators and getting their blessings is extremely important. And then the last one, I would say, and perhaps I would say most important one, is helping the incumbent insurance companies implement their solutions in a low risk, low cost way. And the biggest obstacle that I have come across is finding ways or helping incumbents test and refine their ideas within the constraints of their legacy technology platforms. Finding new SaaS-based solutions that that enable incumbents to launch, test, and refine new insurtech ideas in a very short period of time without risking their traditional business and at a low cost. So I think those are the four things that those are the four pitfalls that I would be very, very watchful about.
In terms of the London sort of ecosystem, do you think it's quite supportive in enabling you to avoid some of those pitfalls in terms of testing your product? What's the support system like for tech startups in the insurance side? I
think the UK ecosystem is the best I have come across anywhere in Europe, the United States, Asia, or in other countries. I think the ecosystem is very, very supportive, starting with the regulators, with the incubators, and the incumbents. I think the incumbents, I would say 5 years ago, they were quite reluctant, quite hesitant, and at times constrained by not only by their legacy technology, but their legacy culture, governance, and org structures. And I think many of them have moved the needle there massively. The only thing that still remains a challenge is the legacy technology. But overall, I think the ecosystem in the UK is very, very supportive. And I must add the venture capital or the venture capitalists, all the investors to the mix as well.
Brilliant. Ben, I know Navdeep referred to you a couple of times, and I'm sure you know a bit about this space as well. Is there anything you'd like to add to anything Navdeep said so far?
I don't think I can find any particular words to add to what I think was a fantastic expression. So no, thank you. It's very kind offer, but what Navdeep says, that stands on its own entirely without my support. Spot on. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Look, I think I just highlight one last thing, Navdeep. I think one thing you're looking to do, obviously, right now is design an insurtech cluster, and I think we're working with you on that. Anything you can say about why you think that's important or different to what's available at the moment?
Yes, indeed. I would highlight three things. I think that I believe an aspiring insurtech would need. I think number one, as I said earlier, a grounding in how the insurance ecosystem works, how value flows. And I think it's great to be able to come to the market with new ideas and new technologies, but unless you can make them work in the ecosystem, I think you're not going to be successful, right? And we can say everything we want to say about the incumbents and how traditional they are, but the reality is you're going to need them to scale. You're going to need them to prove your solutions. You're going to need the ecosystem, right? So I think being a part of this insurance cluster will enable you to get embedded into the realities of the UK insurance ecosystem. The second one is networking. I think a large part of your success will depend upon connecting to the ecosystem network, connecting to the VCs that are singly focused on insurance, that understand the market, connecting to the regulators and to the sandbox, and getting guidance for people such as Ben in the room, right, who've been at the forefront of this and have built such models in the past. And then number three, I would say, the insights about how to make, to launch, test, and refine your products, right, in the market. And I think for all of this, you want access to such clusters that can offer you the guidance, that can offer you the expertise, and even find sources for you to A, get investments, and B, collaborate with to test your products.
Brilliant. And I should add to everyone, even though we share the same surname, same great surname, we're not actually related, just to be clear. Okay. I thought I'd point that out. All right, brilliant. Next speaker. Thank you very much, Navdeep. That was really, really excellent. Next speaker we've got is Akrit Bosch, CEO of Haptic. a scale up that, and I guess Akrit can tell you a bit about the story himself, but done amazing things in India, then reached out to the US and is now looking at the UK market as well. Akrit, it'd be great if you give a few words about yourself, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks so much, Sandeep, for having me. And I swear, I had my money on you and Navdeep being related. It was not only because of the last name, but even the first name is similar. So I figured that this was a situation where either parents or somebody decided to have similar names. But anyway, and thanks so much, Navdeep and Ben, on some really fascinating insights, especially for us, and I'll tell you why. As Sandeep mentioned, my name is Akrit Vesh. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Haptic. We're a conversational AI platform. So essentially, we enable chatbots, voice interfaces, AI solutions, particularly for mid to large enterprise customers globally. We, about 2.5 years back, raised a strategic financing of $100 million US from Reliance Jio Platforms, which is a large telco turned to consumer internet here in this part of the world. And now, since that time, we have basically been focused towards taking our platform to other parts of the world. Like Sandeep mentioned, we went to the US first, and the only reason for that was we were more familiar with the market. I lived there for a number of years, and we had a few case studies. So we just, given the familiarity, we went there first, and over the last 2.5 years, we've been spending our time growing that market, and now I think we have a fairly good handle, and the team is growing. And then this year, we looked at all other places that we wanted to, that we felt there was a relevant customer demand, and we felt that the solution that we have could add a lot of value. One just quick heads up. One unique aspect about our product is that because it's natural language and conversational AI, for us, entering markets that potentially have a very local custom language other than English is always slightly trickier, because that means we have to customize the product to, let's say, a Mandarin, for example, or a Japanese, or let's say, Spanish or Bahasa. So in that sense, the natural next thing for us after US, and then we do some work in Africa and Southeast Asia, was to look at, what are the other English speaking regions, because that's an easier entry for us, given we won't have to do so much customization. And obviously, in that sense, UK made a lot of sense. So we've just gotten started. It's been barely about 2 months. We have one person on the ground, as it goes with new markets and new developments. Too early to actually, we don't know anything yet, right? So too early to comment on what we've learned, because we've not learned anything. It's in fact, I would say the last 45 minutes of this conversation has been super fascinating for us to just learn about how you guys are thinking about market entry for startups, mature companies like ours, and so on. And some very interesting and relevant points, particularly for us to understand around regulation and Brexit, like how that may impact or may not impact, rather, as let's say you alluded to, plans for our company. We've not yet set up a local corporate structure because, exactly, we're just waiting to see, is UK going to be the place? Do we want to do maybe somewhere else, depending upon some of these aspects? So right now, we're just sort of waiting to see how that plays out. Our initial, our thesis, or what at least the research we've done before making this move, has been that, the UK, when it comes to buying behavior for software, does tend to operate similar to the US in that sense. Obviously, there are very different nuances and local challenges, but at least the requirements are similar. The brands in the verticals that we focus on think about similar problems and want similar outcomes. You guys can keep me real over here, but from what we know and we've heard, the buying cycle is slightly longer in the UK relative, to the States. So that's something that we are setting ourselves up to be prepared for. I think The one thing that we've from whatever research we've done, we've seen or heard is that for a while there was a genuine preference to locally homegrown products and companies. But what we've seen or we've been hearing for the last few years is that as long as there's local presence now, buyers and brands mostly want the best product, whether that comes from the US or from Asia, like how we are entering. So riding on that belief is where we are trying to enter the market. The core verticals that we focus on are e-com, insurance. We were actually at a pretty big travel business that is slightly slowed down for obvious reasons, and then ancillary financial services, and then of course telco, given our strategic relationship that we have with our investors. So these are the 4 or 5 primary types of industries that we look at. I think we'll have a lot more to share in terms of our initial war stories in a few months. We're just about signing up our first couple of customers right now.
It's just one thing. Obviously, everyone wants to know if they're thinking about scaling up, perhaps for the first time, and you've done it a few times now already. How about sharing some of the stories that you've done from launches into new countries you've done in the past, what you've learned from that, and perhaps you may or may not account to those in the UK, but it'd be good to understand from your perspective of some of the challenges you've faced, and whether you're wondering you'll face in the UK as well.
Yeah. Great question, Sandeep. So actually, given that we've now done this in 3 or 4 different markets over the last 3 years, we've come up with what we call a new market playbook. And that basically follows what we call 3 different phases. The first phase of any new market for us is what we call meet the market. So during the meet the market phase, we actually don't sell at all. We don't pitch, we don't do hard sales. All we are doing is trying to meet exciting and well-networked people like folks on this panel. And all we're saying is that, hey, look, we're here. This is what we do. Would love to get your feedback. Would love to get your thoughts. Would love to understand how you guys think of the product in the local market. Like I said, there's no sales going on. It's just one-way learning, absorbing, getting insights, getting feedback, thinking about how we should set up things, what we should customize. We've realized that during the meet the market phase, we end up having about at least 40 to 50 such conversations that are absolutely not related to actually trying to sell. And through that, few things happen. One, we learn a lot about what the product may need to do, how we should set things up, where are the different white spaces. Second, typically, if you end up having 40 to 50 conversations and most people are extremely helpful with their time, we end up getting through that our first 3 or 4 leads that end up becoming relevant customer conversations. And through that, we end up closing what I call our first POC, right? So the first POC on the first deal is critical for us. And more importantly, delivering on the first POC or the deal is the most important, right? Ensuring that we actually implement it successfully. The customer is extremely happy and successful with what they see. They're so happy that they go tell 20 people about it, that look, I took this product, implemented it, and it's worked really, really well. So this is meet the market. Typically goes anywhere between 3 to 5 months. Expectations during this time is just as many discussions as we can have. We don't typically set a revenue target during this time. Assuming this went well, we've learned a lot, we're convinced, we got our first POC who's extremely happy and successful. We then go to phase 2, which we call make the market, which is when we actually start doing sales, right? So that's when we then develop like a sales pitch, our playbook. We start doing marketing, we start reaching out to customers, prospecting, cold calling, all the fun stuff that comes with sales. With the learnings we've had from that first phase, because we now are better equipped, better prepared. And like I said, if the first customer is really happy with us, they've probably sent us another 4, right? So that's when we start doing sales. Meet the market typically for us also lasts another 3 to 6 months, or sometimes longer, depending upon the nature of market. We think in the UK it will be like slightly longer given the buying pattern. So let's assume that below 6 to 12 months. The objective of that is to get about 3 to 5 full contracts during that phase. Proper licensed long-term contracts, given all the learnings we've had. And once that works, then phase 3, which is what we call scale the market, which is just add fuel to the fire. So given if we assume that we've gotten those 3 to 5 deals and we have a nice rhythm going, then usually my question to most of my local market heads is that what's the best you can do and what does that mean in terms of investment? That's when we typically set up a local entity. That's when we typically hire as many as we think we can, hire as many people as we think can help us achieve market domination in a 2 to 3 year time frame, and really sort of double down on that. So yeah, that's our playbook. Might sound trivial at this point and fairly okay, that makes sense, but obviously to put it in action is a lot of work and a lot of iteration along the way.
If you don't mind, what I'm going to do is I think there's some really interesting points. I wouldn't even mind if we sort of bounce some of those ideas about your approach and how you've approached it in other markets to get some feedback about how it works in the UK. But I know Lara has to disappear earlier than the end of the webinar. So if you don't mind, I'm going to come back to you.
Sure, yeah.
That's fun. And move over to Lara if that's okay. Lara, trying to do as quickly as I can. I know you better go. So Lara is from Google. She works for Google, heading up the data and AI technology practice, as well as a multitude of other things, which I always forget, but they always seem really impressive when she tells me. So Lara, it'd be great if you just tell us a bit about yourself first, and then perhaps we'll go in a few sort of key questions.
Sandeep, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and every other panelist. So I'm Dr. Lara Suzuki, so I head the UK and Ireland data practice for Google. And I also work with the Interplanetary Internet with NASA and and Google Cloud as well. And I am a professor at UCL and I teach at Harvard University as well.
Brilliant. As I said, impressive, right? But we're going to focus on smart cities. So Lara also co-chairs the Tech London Advocate Smart Cities with myself, actually. But so what we're going to do today is focus a bit on that side of things, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Again, the first question, Lara, is just talking about the key players. So someone's looking to enter the UK market. How does it work in the UK? How would they think about getting in? Who do they know?
The people they should know, yes? So businesses and entrepreneurs in smart city sectors, they can play a very important role in helping us to achieve smart cities priorities. And they benefit from London's innovation ecosystem, which includes top digital practitioners, the Tech London advocates groups, business support and investors network, world-class research and leaders in education, infrastructure mega projects, open data, and City as a system initiative that cut across different silos. So the key stakeholders in London smart cities market includes the GLA, the Greater London Authority, borough authorities, utility providers, waste contractors, the Transport for London, as well as national players such as the NHS and UK government. And aside from government, we also have the Smart London Board, the London Office of Technology Innovation, LOTI, which is also an organization that invites people wanting to work on the smart cities arena to make sure that they have access to all the resources available. We also have the Future Cities Catapult, Tech UK as well, the Greater London Authority, as I said before, the TLA Smart Cities, which is a group that brings together all the practitioners on smart cities to share ideas and thought leadership pieces. We also have a series of incubators and accelerators, such as Entrepreneur First and Silicon Valley Comes to the UK, which is a very fantastic initiative that I will be talking later. But London's regulated sectors, such as energy, water, and waste, face specific challenges. For instance, there's a little incentive for waste contractors to operate more efficiently, and fixed water charges deter like reducing water consumption by people. So it's quite difficult to change behavior of people because of the fixed water rate. So what I believe is that amongst those key stakeholders is that the Greater London Authority could help to coordinate those groups, that ecosystem of stakeholders to overcome the challenges and take advantage of the many opportunities we have in London. And it would also bring together the boroughs and those stakeholders together, like entrepreneurs, like startups, SMEs. They could work on setting up what are the work priorities, where we should focus on smart cities, create standards on the role of digital technology in new developments to help the local authorities and private developers to embrace the opportunities that technology can bring to us. And I think that it's also a good space for instance, especially the TLA Smart Cities Group, to bring people with understanding on how AI also affects smart cities and how we can ethically use technology to improve people's lives.
Really good, thank you for that. And I think just in terms of, I think you've already touched upon it in what you were saying, but just in terms of where do you see at the moment the key areas of demand in terms of smart city projects? Are there any particular focus areas that you see at the moment?
Yeah, so I think that London has an underlying condition that is perfect to enable a world-leading smart city. So I think that the government has embarked into these smart cities by setting the Smart London Board and laying down the priorities on the Smart London Plan. And digital solutions can support many of the priorities of the government, for instance, optimize public service delivery, reduce carbon and congestion and disruption of London transport system, improve air quality, increase Londoners' well-being, enable greater public participation in policy processes, which is quite important. How do we get the feedback loops back into the system? And also to deliver economic benefits. So according to Arup, the London smart city market could reach approximately £90 billion by 2021. And almost half of this market will be from the following 5 sectors: energy, water, waste, transport, and health. So we have a lot of opportunities in smart energy. So London faces a lot of challenges, including security of supply, aging infrastructure for energy. And there's a plenty of opportunities for companies to develop more solutions for renewable energy, smart grid, electric transport, and also create applications for people to make better use of our assets. So for an example that I have is the Strawberry Tree project, which creates a tree in the form of like a solar panel and gives the electricity free for people. And that is one of the great projects that we have on smart energy. In smart water management, for instance, because of London's growing population, we will have a demand for water that will exceed 10% by 2025. And climate change also poses a threat to London flood-prone areas. So opportunities on smart water management and smart waste management are, for instance, smart leak detection using IoT, smart metering, data analytics for flood risk management, and also to identify drainage capacity in the different areas of the city. And in smart waste management, we not only want to optimize collection of travel routes, but we also want to improve recycling rates and help people to help one another. So there is a project called Big Belly in which they not only optimize the routes for waste collection, but they also help people to change their behavior. So you can see on a map the areas of the city that has a very big recycling uptake, and then you can see neighborhoods competing with one another to see who is recycling the most. So it helps people to change their behavior. In smart transportation, we have a lot of challenges because of the growing population. And Transport for London, for instance, is reliant on data and smart technology to optimize traffic and also demand. And they release a lot of open data that can help people to create applications that help to reduce carbon emissions, and also helps us to optimize routes and to help people to get from point A to point B efficiently. So a very successful case for this is CityMapper, that was a spin out from kind of the London Smart City, that helps people to get to point A and B more efficiently using different modes of transportation, so that we can make use of like bikes and others. Finally, in health and assistive living, So longer life expectancy and mental health and obesity are some of the London's major challenges in health. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to do telecare solutions, accessibility applications, fitness and health monitoring devices. However, we have to have a tighter partnership with NHS for us to be able to do this. An example of a startup is Proximi. So what they do, they use augmented reality that you can do just with a tablet to help doctors from one place to another to teach each other how to operate a patient, for instance, if they're not specialized. And we're going to have a shortage of 2.3 million physicians because they are not well specialized in different types of surgery. And we are going to have 70% of the world's population lacking safe surgical care. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to also invest on healthcare and assisted living in London.
Brilliant. Lots of great ideas there for anyone who's in that space. What do you find though, with all these bike lanes in London, the traffic's got so much worse, hasn't it? I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, indeed.
Just finally, and I think we are looking at sort of scale-up startups, I guess, people looking at the UK market. I guess one question that's on everyone's lips always is, you know, is there any funding available? Are there any grants available? Is there any support to sort of get partnerships on the ground to sort of reduce the overlying cost? Any sort of thoughts, ideas you can give people on that?
Yes, so one of the things that I recommend is for people to check out the Royal Academy of Engineering Enterprise Hub. So the Academy offers a number of grants aimed at identifying and supporting the next generation of high potential entrepreneurs. And they also provide prizes celebrating success and innovation in entrepreneurship. So I would recommend people to check the Enterprise Hub from the Royal Academy of Engineering. Innovate UK Smart Grants. I also recommend people taking a look into this because organizations can apply for a share of up to 25 million for game-changing, commercially viable R&D innovation that can significantly impact the UK economy. So I will also urge people to look for the Eureka Eurostars, which is a program in the European Union, like funding projects led by Innovate UK. There's also a grant available from the British Council, so through the Newton Fund. So I would also encourage people to take a look into that. On the no money side, but on the mentorship and scale up, I would recommend people checking out the Silicon Valley Comes to the UK happening in November, so people can register for free. So Silicon Valley Comes to the UK was founded in 2006 to boost the global ecosystem for tech entrepreneurship at a time where knowledge and investment felt siloed within Silicon Valley. So today, Silicon Valley Comes to the UK exists to support all entrepreneurs on their journey to scale by removing barriers and connecting them to tech ecosystem. So if you attend the Silicon Valley Comes to the UK in November, you're going to hear real world scaling stories, meet global tech leaders, and discover a global business community. And again, it's a free event. And finally, I would, if you are looking for seed money or to start something new, I would encourage people to check Entrepreneur First, which is also an incubator that helps a lot of startups in smart cities to emerge. So those would be my suggestions for people wanting to enter on this space and want granting and also mentoring for them to scale up.
Oh, wonderful. And we'll open up to some of the others. I'm sure Matt, both Matts and Ben have got some good ideas around sort of the grant and funding sort of space as well. So thank you for that. The only thing I think I'd end with, Laura, I think one thing that you were looking to do as part of TLA Smart Cities was to run spotlight sessions on some tech companies. Maybe if you just present that offer to any sort of smart city startups out there, they can reach out to you.
Yes, so one of the things that we are doing is running like thought leadership pieces through the TLA Smart Cities so that we can publicize this on social media and also in our website. And the good thing about this is that you're going to have access to a global audience of over 10,000 people. So you can sign up for those thought leadership sessions and spotlights by contacting Sandeep or myself. And then what we can do is to showcase your initiative, your business, and make that visible to thousands of tech leaders in the UK. So that would be one of the requests that we have.
Perfect. Free publicity, what's not to like, right?
Yes, indeed.
Brilliant. Look, Lara, thank you very much. That's great. So, I mean, if you can stay on, please stay on. If you need to go, that's absolutely fine. I do understand. We want to come on to Matt now. And sorry, Matt, it's taken a while to get to you, but we're there now. So Matt comes from Mazars. He heads up the technology and digital advisory practice. Matt, it'd be great just to tell us a bit more about what that actually means in your day-to-day and how you work with tech companies.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Sandy. So you kind of stole the intro there, because essentially that's what I do. So I head up the technology and kind of digital advisory side of our business. Mazars is essentially a fairly large professional services firm, so 40,000 people globally. But in the UK, I suppose more interestingly, so our team is made up of cybersecurity professionals, data and automation kind of specialists. Then you've got kind of assurance specialists who do the whole raft of kind of audit work. And then you've got me and my team, which is more about the advisory side. So strategic management, essentially supporting clients of all different kind of types and sizes. So I work with startups and scale ups all the way through to FTSE 50 organizations and other global entities. So I've been doing this now for just over 12 years as part of professional services. But you're right, the whole thing about what actually is advisory is a great question. And essentially it's trying to find solutions to management's problems. And this last 18 months has just been a brilliant, fascinating and totally unprecedented time for exactly that.
No, definitely. No, I can imagine. Before we just jump into perhaps a bit more sort of pertinent questions around your area, just wanted to wonder, Matt, so you heard Ukrit outline his strategy when he thinks about sort of scaling up in a new country. What do you think of its applicability to the UK? And would you sort of suggest any sort of differences, or what's your high level thinking on this?
So I think what's already been mentioned so far, I think, is exactly the right approach. And I might come on to this a bit later in terms of one of the core challenges I think that you get startups and scale ups when entering the UK. And fundamentally for me, Sandeep, it comes down to trust. And I think if anything, the last 18 months has made a lot of organizations I work with quite introverted in nature, in the terms of they doubled down with the relationships and suppliers and partners they already had. And actually trying to get them exposed to newer suppliers has been more challenging. So I think some of the approaches that have been mentioned, so I think Accurate was talking about it as well, in terms of actually not trying to sell too hard, just trying to get the brand and what they do and the expertise out there, trying to build those relationships. Because fundamentally, I think from a supplier perspective, trust, and especially cybersecurity, because it's so hyped, it's everywhere you read. Whenever there's a scare story or a breach in the press, cybersecurity in the supply chain is commonly kind of touted as a reason perhaps not to trust others. And I think for any new organization, just doubling down on actually how do we get past that? How do we reassure our potential customers that this is just not an issue from the get-go? I think is really important. So I fully agree with what's been said so far. I think just building that trust up is absolutely paramount to success in the UK market.
And you see that across all sort of sizes of organization, not just the large corporates, but we're talking sort of mid-tier and sort of the SMEs as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think particularly in the larger organizations, naturally they have a whole raft of policies which will now kind of enforce these types of changes and make sure that when you're going out to tender now, so for example, being able to demonstrate that you've done this piece of work for a similar client or customer X number of times, that can be really hard or challenging for a new organization in a new country. And I think this comes back down to things that people like Ben and Navdeep were talking earlier. If you can't do that because you don't have the experience, I think collaboration with your peers and even your competitors is just a fantastic way of doing that. And that's something, again, we've seen more and more so. Something that was probably unprecedented 5 years ago is now encouraged from the strategy handbook.
No, that's brilliant. No, thanks for that. Ben and Matt Robinson, I don't know if there's additional thoughts you've got in terms of, again, the approach that I've taken. The trust thing is obviously a great thought process given COVID and what we've seen happening now. Do you have any other additional thoughts based on what Ukrit said that maybe we want to add to that?
I think, we were talking before about Ben's point about collaboration. Matt's hit on it there as well. It really is what's moving to the fore now. I think that where there are shared challenges, there's an opportunity to have those discussions, to be quite honest about those discussions, building on Matt's trust point as well. I think events like London Tech Week, we've got Leeds Digital Festival, Manchester's Digital Festival coming up. These are all opportunities to start to build a network and start to understand that actually some people are having the same challenges out there as you. And it's okay to identify that as a challenge, start to contemplate that and think about just how the sector is going to react to it. And similarly, I think there's organizations like Northern Powerhouse, Midlands Engine, Invest Northern Ireland as well, who are really actually looking to try and support business, and being honest about that challenge isn't a bad thing in our current environment.
No, brilliant. Thank you for that. Ben, anything to add from your side?
I think really just to agree enthusiastically again, but also to draw the point even further, perhaps, and say that trust seems to grow very much when people go out of their way slightly. And I've certainly observed in communities like Level 39 that those organisations and indeed individuals that are most successful stray beyond their brief quite a lot. So you'll often find they're coming up in conversations about things which are very much not their core business, a way in which people often describe this as paying it forward, of course. But if you can be helpful, even if it's not really your domain of expertise, it's well worth doing so. If you do that, what you're doing, of course, is you're providing that kind of third-party function of creating closure in a network. You're making sure that people know of each other before they know the detail. And that helps build trust. It's the basics of social capital.
No, brilliant. There's some real gems there. And I think for anyone sort of listening in, we will share the recording, as we said at the start. And I think so many names have been mentioned of organizations you perhaps should be aware of during this call. So if you went back on slow speed, then I think you probably picked some of those up. So look, thank you very much for that, guys. Matt, just want to talk a bit more about your work now at Mazars. What would be great, I think, for any sort of tech company look at UK is to try to understand a bit more about some of the priorities of companies buying tech at the moment. What areas have you seen a bit of a spike in? Which areas do you think are particularly in vogue at the moment?
Yeah, good question. I guess if I reflect on the last kind of 12 or 18 months, and I'm conscious that the crowd we've got here are already very much invested and interested in technology, but if you're looking at priorities, I'd argue, and ironically, that the first priority is that businesses have been taking or considering technology as a real priority for them. And we've seen a real kind of turning tide of opinion across all organizations that we've worked with. And I'm going to borrow an analogy from one of my colleagues, and it likens, I guess, historically, kind of leadership teams at organizations. They've been sat in front of this kind of control panel that's just a sea of levers. And right down at the end is a lever kind of completely coated in dust that has technology on it. And all of these other levers have now been pulled and explored as far as they can go. And I think now businesses have seen, particularly with the move to things like remote working, that technology not only helps people in their day-to-day jobs, it's actually fundamental, and it's impossible to split that from kind of core business processes these days. So I think now that awareness exists for technology and it's considered as a priority in its own right, that whole strategic kind of thinking around use cases and how it can benefit both them and part of their broader supply chain are kind of a really interesting avenues to explore. I think if you're then to drill down into specific technologies, so none of these are new, but I think cloud and cloud first is something that every organization is not just talking about. They've been talking about it for years, but I think that they're actually acting upon it now. And I think things like kind of integrated platforms as a service in particular, so being able to simplify setups and make sure they're scalable for the long term, I think has been a real priority for the clients I've been working with. So cloud, again, it's not new, but it's certainly kind of, it's been really doubling down in terms of the organizations that have invested in it. And then I think, interestingly, technologies like automation and robotics. So again, something that has been hyped and mentioned for an awful long time, but we're starting to see organizations, both, again, the large and listed, but interestingly, the smaller organizations really invest in automation and robotics. And for the more mature organizations, that's rolling it out to much kind of broader parts of their business, both within the UK and globally. But the smaller organizations are rolling out pilots now for individual parts of their business to really understand how kind of RPA and automation, and I guess AI as well, that's been mentioned, can really benefit them, both in this kind of this current way of working and the future, I guess, post-COVID hybrid way of working as well. So I think cloud, automation and RPA, I have to mention cybersecurity. It's not going anywhere. It's kind of at the forefront of many of my clients' minds, and I guess investment in cybersecurity technologies and defenses has certainly not decreased over the last 12 or 24 months.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for that. Very helpful. And I think you probably touched upon it already when you were speaking back to Akrit's point, but talking about barriers to entry for new startups. I mean, you obviously mentioned trust and it resonated with everyone on the panel, but is there any other areas that you think you've seen from your clients when they show reservation to working with a company, a new company, a company from overseas, that type of thing?
I think it all fundamentally boils down to trust. But if I just elaborate on one of the areas, so we've talked about things like cybersecurity in the supply chain and being able to demonstrate that you're perhaps not that weak link of that overall footprint. I think the other elements that again has been mentioned is about market acceptance. And I think the interesting thing we tend to see is that the real challenge is gaining that first 5 to 10% foothold within the market. And after that, we start to see a bit of a snowball effect. So the next kind of 10 to 15% in terms of, I guess, market share, it follows pretty rapidly. So again, there's nothing new here, Sandy. It probably hasn't already been mentioned by others, but I think how you get that first 5 to 10%, and there's been some really good examples so far as to how people are doing it. And I know Akrit was talking about this earlier, I think is really the fundamental challenge. And I think once you've really kind of nailed that part of it, and you've got both a really good product, but you've also got a bit of a platform from which to build upon, that will take you really far. And again, borrowing, I think, the example that was mentioned earlier, the hype and the fact that something was a buzzword maybe several years ago would have been enough, and now it's not, and you need that platform from which to build upon.
No, that's really good. I think kind of, as you said, links to Akrit's point. So it's kind of like the way I you described, you'll meet the market with your first phase of getting to know some of your potential clientele. That phase really is to make sure your product is a good fit for the market. You understand all the concerns of potential buyers, and then before you do the big push, you've kind of got the right responses or adaptations to your product before you go out for a big push. Because clearly, thinking about cybersecurity, etc., if you've got all these issues still lingering and you haven't got ways of answering them, doing a big push may be something that would hold you back a little bit. So no, I get that. One final question for you, Matt. Just thinking about COVID, the fact that we're kind of coming out of it a bit now, or hopefully we are in the UK where we're open again, even though we know it hasn't gone away anywhere near gone away. Are there any lingering issues coming out of what we've been suffering over the last year and a half, 18 months that are still out there? Do you see something, going forward another 12 months that probably won't go away, even though perhaps the pandemic may have died down a bit? What's your general thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I guess we could probably spend several days talking about lingering concerns kind of post-COVID, but I think for many organizations, so we talked a bit about how technology is now seen as a real strategic priority. And I think that's wonderful, but I don't think it's yet materialized in how the entire organization or business is brought into that. So I think we're going to start to see a bit more strategic thinking about how all of these different technologies, whether it's kind of fintechs or insurtechs, can really kind of leverage some of our existing kind of customers and suppliers, for example. So I think there's going to be a much more strategic approach to all of this. But I think what's also interesting as well, and I have this discussion with our kind of internal leadership team at Mazars, is how actually organizations are going to operate, kind of, we'll call it kind of beyond COVID, but we're not quite there yet. And we've seen some quite high profile organizations say how they intend to work and operate. And all of that uses technology, which is why it's so relevant. But I don't think anyone's really come out with a blueprint that has been widely accepted in terms of how businesses are going to function and operate. And I think for me, that creates a really good opportunity for so many new players in the market to become involved and really define what this future world looks like. And if I pick a particular example, so we've been having conversations with customers in our kind of consumer and retail sectors, for example. And again, it's not new technology, but they are really looking at how they can, for example, use things like augmented reality or virtual realities in a really kind of practical and quite immediate way to continue to allow customers to operate the way they have been doing for the last 12 or 18 months, but also to supplement and really add value to, I guess, their in-person shopping approach. So this hybrid way of working or post-COVID way of working that is both a concern internally within organizations is also probably a real concern and challenge as to how they embrace consumers in this kind of post-COVID landscape as well. And I know I keep mentioning post-COVID there, but I think really understanding how an organization wants to approach that And as importantly, what technology it wants to use to do so, I think is going to be the real focus for many of my customers, at least over the next probably 5 years, I'd argue.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think using that perspective as well from what you've seen, do you see that any different to the way UK is responding compared to some of the other? Do you think we're losing out on business over here as a result of that? Do you think other markets are taking a slightly different approach? Or are you seeing it's pretty much everyone's trying to work their way through this problem?
I think there are shared concerns, and globally, and I guess I speak on behalf of my colleagues kind of globally, that there is there's shared concerns that globally, kind of as a team, both ourselves as an organization and our customers are trying to work towards collectively. But I think what is different is the pace at which different countries are doing that. And I think, so Ben touched upon this in his talk earlier about kind of from a regulatory perspective. I think we have certain tools and mechanisms in place in the UK that are certainly not hindering us from making progress. And I think there is at least confidence in the marketplace to make some of these important decisions at the moment. I'll caveat all of that with the answers to many of those questions aren't known yet, and they are still being explored. But I think I can say quite confidently that there is most definitely confidence in the marketplace, and I think that translates into new organizations and new startups and new technologies entering the marketplace.
Brilliant. Matt, thank you very much. I'm looking at our time. We're about 3 minutes left. I don't know if our esteemed panelists have got anything else they'd like to add to the audience before we start thinking about closing up. I think we have shared a lot already, haven't we? So that's absolutely fine. I'll just see if there's any questions we can probably, I think one poll's gone up for the attendees. So please have a go at that if you don't mind. And I'll just have a quick look at the questions in 2 seconds we've got. Akrid, you potentially got a buyer okay, in the chat. So there you go, that was worth it. So I'll share those details with you. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I would love to know the answer to that.
Absolutely. What else have we got? We've got just quickly see if there's anything. I think most of them we've kind of touched upon in some shape or form anyway. I mean, there are a few sort of questions one-to-one which we can share with you guys afterwards. Yeah, a few people want to connect, so that's fine. Look, I think we're probably okay. Look, I think we'll close off. I mean, if there are any questions to the audience, if there are any questions, we will look to get back to you. Braden will try and get back to you and see if we can get those questions answered for you. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, it was a very informative session. I would strongly suggest if you're seriously interested about the UK market, watch the video, go back, because I think there's a lot of gems in there. So thank you very much to our panelists. Really appreciate your insights. I hope you enjoyed it too. And as I said, look forward to sharing this with you. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a lot of fun. Great meeting, Ben, Matt, and Matt. Would definitely love to stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Thank you.
Thanks. All the best, guys. Take care. Thanks, audience. Bye.